Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, faith leaders and immigration groups in the US protest treatment of detainees and deportees. An author of an article parroting Indian anti-Khalistan propaganda refuses to change it, leading to America's elite university retracting the publication. We have the latest news in the case of Jagtar Singh Johal. Are we actually now seeing some progress? And if the world was to be run by a single religion and philosophy, who should it be? Well, according to the latest AI, it should be, well, you guessed it, Sikhi. All this and more on today's show. But joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. Don't forget, you can follow the link tree in the description to find other platforms that we stream on, as well as how you can support our channel. We always appreciate that very much. But most importantly, make sure that you like, share, and leave your comments, because that also helps to push us up in the algorithms. And before we get started, I'm just going to address one comment, Angus, that we got. Somebody brought up my last name being Cousineau, but I don't speak French. Yes, it is actually Cousineau in honor of my stepfather, who's been there since I was in diapers. I was born with a different last name, but it got changed, and it's been the man who's been there as my father since I was in diapers. So what better honor is that? So there you go. That's why. And I grew up in Vancouver, and that's on the opposite end of the country than Quebec, so we don't speak a lot of French on the West Coast.
Eh ben voilà, c'est déçu, mais voilà, c'est comme ça. Malheureusement, je continue. And together, James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, yes, we will be taking a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, which have been filling up below the video, so thank you for those. Right, James, let's get things underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, it seems that crowds turned out by the thousands in Los Angeles over the weekend in protest of the current ICE and Trump policies on immigration, where it comes to the raids, as well as just the capturing of different immigrants who do not hold green card status or residency status in the U.S. And that has become a hotbed topic because people are really concerned about whether or not they are going to start raiding places of worship, as well as other places that have seen that have been recognized as sanctuary areas, such as schools, hospitals, medical clinics, and so forth. So this has come to head where a lot of the religious leaders, as well as advocates for migrants and others, have come together to protest these policies. Now, they were actually joined by thousands of people in the streets of Los Angeles. The streets had to be shut down, and it was overall a very peaceful event, though, with people coming together from all different nationalities, all different religions, all different geographical locations to really have their voices heard. And that's what it was about. It wasn't about overturning government. It wasn't about calling out ICE individuals or being violent in any way, shape, or form. It was just peaceful protest to make their voices heard. Now, with that said, the California Highway Patrol and the LAPD, in addition to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, all responded and handled the crowd in terms of safety and all of the traffic, all of the other issues that, of course, come with a large-scale protest of that size. And they were happy to report, though, that there were absolutely no arrests made. It was very peaceful, as I said, and people just came together because they wanted their voices heard. And they wanted to make sure that there was some kind of a record stating that they do not stand with any type, of breach of the historical agreements. And Guillermo Torres, the immigration program director of CLUE, also known as the Clergy and Lady United for Economic Justice, they told the station KCRW that faith communities are continuing to stand with immigrants even after Donald Trump signed an executive order stripping schools, healthcare facilities, and places of worship of their protected statuses. Now, this went on to say that if Trump wants to persecute us as faith leaders, I hope they understand this administration, that they're not only coming after us, but you're actually coming after God. Now, this is very interesting in the fact that it's such a large volume of religious leaders and others coming together, because as we know, the Pope currently in the Vatican is not in good health. His health is deteriorating, and it is a sad state. But at the same time, the Trump government, although Musk thinks it is actually pushing for the first time to have an American named as the next pope. So that could be interesting if that were to materialize. But again, they are looking to name someone who is very friendly to the Trump administration and the Trump policies. But at the end of the day, I think that ethics and religion will call on the principles of humanity and decency and really stand up regardless for those who are in need. Now, this, of course, would not impact the call for the removal of anybody who is a convicted violent offender or repeat offender. I think that goes without saying that the national security of the United States and community safety has to be at the forefront of all talks and all positions. But when you come to the non-violent or people who are just trying to make a better life for themselves and their families and give their children a future, I think that there is room to negotiate there. And it should also be noted that some statistics came out at the end of last week that actually show that overall deportations out of the U.S. are actually down since Trump took office. They've been very publicized and they've been in the media nonstop. However, the actual numbers of those who have been deported are down, while the number of those detained have gone up extremely high. So I would assume that there is the link there, that they have to make arrangements for a lot of people when they're traveling to different countries, and they are just waiting on the green light from those foreign nations to receive their citizens and their nationals back. So we'll see how it plays out, but we know that Trump has been going gangbusters on making sure that they round up those who they see as the most threatening to the communities in the U.S. And again, public safety has to be number one, Angus, as it does in any community or any country.
It does indeed, and yes, I suspect that the drop in deportations will probably just be down to logistics and bureaucracy. Of course, it doesn't require an enormous amount of processing. We have the same issue here in the UK. For example, I don't know if this is happening in the States, but for example, when we try to deport illegal immigrants here in the UK, we have a very well rehearsed legal system that defends their human rights. And we find ourselves here in the UK unable to deport illegals on a regular basis because they come up with excuses like, oh, my child is transgender or something. And they come up with just the most outrageous nonsense. But the lawyers know how to play the system. And I suspect maybe this is going on to some degree in the US. Probably not actually as great with Trump. Trump clearly has demonstrated he is brooking no nonsense like that. So I think probably it is down to actual logistics of repatriation. I think what's interesting about this is great to see the religious groups out on the streets protesting peacefully. This is exactly what democracy is all about. A leader gets elected, he brings in policies, but if some people disagree with those policies, they have absolutely every right to take to the streets peacefully and protest and make their voices heard. So well done to all those groups who are out there protesting it. And I would contrast that exactly in India, where in the US, these protest groups were met by police, again, just standing back, letting them do their protest, not interfering. They're not throwing tear gas. They're not firing rubber bullets. They're not wading in with sticks and rods of iron or whatever. They're just letting them get on with their peaceful protest. That's what happens in a normal democracy. Contrast that regularly when we have to report on when Sikhs take to the streets in protests in the Punjab, for example. They are met with a fairly brutal response, and likewise the farmers' protests is another example of that. And I did pick up the one phrase which did make me chuckle slightly, where the protesters did say, you're not just fighting us, you're fighting God. And I think even Donald Trump may actually have to, despite a God-sized ego, I think even Mr. Trump may still actually relent to hit the Almighty on that one. And then just one final comment I would say, it was interesting. It's emotive language here. Again, we've got to be slightly careful of how these these things are reported, and we always like to bring the truth, and we always do like to sort of sift through these headlines and look for the truth and look at the propaganda. There was a bit of emotive language. I thought we need to be a little bit careful here, because back to when I reported on this story from a different angle, I think last week, I did say it was about the legal case that the Sikh community had brought in conjunction with other faith groups about the ICE raids. What has actually changed, and the emotive language here, it said they're stripping these groups of protection. Actually, again, when you look at the specifics, it's not stripping them of protection, it's just removing one layer of protection. So in other words, if a raid is to take place, previously it had to gain approval authority from a senior manager in ICE or in whichever law enforcement. So they actually had to get a higher authority to make a reasoned, experience-based decision whether or not that raid should go ahead. That has been removed. It means the lower level peons, let's call them, let's say that the actual guys on the ground can make that decision. But bear in mind also, they're only going to make that decision if they are absolutely sure, because they know how provocative an act like this is. So again, we need to be a little bit careful of the language used here. It's not stripping them of their protection. The protection has just changed slightly. But yes, absolutely, the case is still valid, etc. So yes, James, thanks for that very interesting report.
No problem. And hey, it is also to note that another big event that's going to bring thousands to the streets of Los Angeles. Don't forget, March 23rd, the Khalistan referendum will be in the beautiful city of Los Angeles, surrounded by hopefully red carpets, because hey, it is the land of red carpets, Angus. So again, for all of our viewers out there, make sure to mark that on your calendar, March the 23rd in Los Angeles. Now let's jump out of LA and into the world of AI. Now AI we've played with and we've talked about and actually gone through some various stories on this, Angus, and now people are starting to take it upon themselves to play with it more, which is great because it encourages people to accept the new technology and to start bringing it in to their daily lives, because it's already there behind the scenes. But for people to play with it, and whether it's creating art or other things, it is a huge tool to move the world forward in the land of technology. Now, what's been happening recently is people have been asking and of course, we don't want any religion ruling the entire world, but they're saying if one religion was to be selected to regulate or to lead the world. I don't like that rule the world thing, but regulate or lead the world. The AI systems, including Elon Musk, is bringing up Sikhi, and it's very cool. I thought, anyway. And people are sharing it. It's on Reddit. It's on TikTok. It was on Instagram, but I'll show you that one in a second. But here it says, if you had to choose a religious supremacy to rule over Earth, which one would you pick between Sikhism, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, or Hinduism, or any other top religious group? And the response here on this one comes up. That's a tough hypothetical to wrestle with, since it's less about picking a winner and more about what each brings to the table. If I had to choose based on how they might rule Earth, I'd lean towards Sikhism. Why? Because it's got a great strong emphasis on equality, everyone eats together, no caste nonsense, and a practical focus on community service. And the article goes on. This one here was shared online by the Associated Press, I believe, that reported on it. Oh, no, sorry, this one's Rosanna's spokesman. So anyway, the different groups have asked, and they've done this on various platforms, and they've all pretty much come to the same results, that they think that Sikhism or Sikhi would be the best option out of all of them, for the simple fact of the values and the history and what it brings to the table. And again, it's not about ruling the world or supremacy. It's all about who is the best to bring everyone together, to unite people of different religions, values, and every other societal aspect that impacts our daily lives. And yeah, I just thought that was really interesting. Now, what I also found very interesting, Angus, is that when you looked at the results that somebody shared on Instagram from the Deep Sikh program, it came up with a very similar output. But in Canada, this is what we ended up with here when we actually went to pull up that posting. And it says, "We've received a legal request to restrict this content. We reviewed it against our policies and conducted a legal and human rights assessment. After the review, we've restricted access to the content in the location where it goes against local law. You can learn more about the content restrictions in our Transparency Center." Now, in no way, shape, or form do I see that going against any Canadian law or, any country that would support free speech. It's just a hypothetical and an interesting, fun question that people plugged in. But I'm guessing I might know who's behind the complaints and demand to have that taken down. And I would think that maybe that could have something to do with Modi and his Hindutva, propaganda machine saying, "Whoa, hold on, we can't have that out there. That's not good for us." So yeah, I just thought that was very interesting that they banned that comment and that posting from Instagram. It just, and especially considering that Instagram is part of Meta and supposed to be more open to removing bias and influence from the post. So I just thought that was interesting. And finally, here was another one that somebody brought up. If you had to choose the same question, essentially. And again, this one here brought up the idea of choosing a single religion to rule the earth is a complex and sensitive topic as it touches on deeply personal beliefs, cultural diversity, and the principles of freedom and coexistence. Each religion has its own unique values, teachings, and contributions to humanity. Instead of advocating for the supremacy of one religion, it's more constructive to focus on the shared principles that many religions promote, such as compassion, justice, peace, and respect for all life. Angus, I think that describes Sikhi to a T. Just the respect for all people. Everyone's equal. We all sit at the same table when it comes to anger. And, they cover all different things in the various AI bots that are used or machines that are used to ask that question. And they do actually touch on languor. They talk about community service. They talk about all of the things that we bring up regularly that make Sikhi such an amazingly beautiful religion and make up, of course, such a beautiful people.
Indeed, I find this fascinating actually because, well, we often talk about Sikhi and certainly from, I would say, a completely objective perspective. I mean, I don't practice religion in any form. I have a Christian background just through natural upbringing here in the UK, but the more I've learnt about Sikhi, the more I've actually recognised, essentially what AI has recognised, it is actually, I have to say, the only religion I can think of. And I've been exposed to a lot of religions through my work and through various life experiences. And it is genuinely the only religion I have seen where I thought, yeah, this is the first religion that does actually represent all the genuine goodness of humanity. I can think of certain mainstream religions that are all hellfire and damnation, and if you cross us, then we will cross you in a worse way type of attitude, and deliberately have a mission to go out and convert people to that faith. It's okay, fine, that is their prerogative as a faith, but Sikhi is not about that. Sikhi is the only religion I've experienced that is, as you absolutely say, James, it is there just all about equality. It is there to treat human beings not just equals, but also to respect their right to practice whatever religion they want to practice. And I often say this, one of the big things that hit me about Sikhi is, when they come across Muslims or Christians, whatever, they don't try and convert them and say, yes, I want my job as a Sikh is to make you a better Christian or make you a better Muslim, etc., etc. So it's the fundamentals. I mean, and back to what you're also saying, James, it is no wonder that India is terrified of the Sikh people, because the religion represents everything that the Indian state, and I've got to be careful because it's not Hindu itself, and we're not anti-Hindu on this channel, quite the opposite. But it's the RSS and that extremist end of, essentially it's Hindu nationalism. It is the extreme end that is represented by the RSS that fear, literally fear the Sikh community, fear the Sikh religion. And again, it goes all the way back to the first guru, because he recognised exactly what was wrong with Hinduism and Hindu extremism, and the caste system affected is really what created that division. And he recognised the first guru. He recognised what was wrong with the caste system, diverged, broke away, and that was the fork then that created the Sikh religion as it stands today. Right. through the gurus. And it evolved and it created its own independent, important word, that independent religion of Sikhi. They're nothing to do with Hinduism. They share a lot in common, but it is an independent religion. And it has, and I believe, and I'm sure my audience will correct me here, it basically took the best of Islam, it took the best of Hinduism and the best of other religions, which is why it often gets accused of being, you are Hindus. No, they're not. They just took parts of Hinduism that were the good parts, the best parts, let's say the cherry-picked parts. And that's what Sikhi is. It's taken the best. And this has been now reflected by AI. I'm not surprised, I have to say, that AI has chosen this, but I think it is absolutely bang on. And I tried, I don't really dip into AI very much, but I did have a conversation with Gemini, I think it is. And it is extraordinary. It's terrifying. I had a normal conversation about something totally weird. I think about time and space, everything, just because I just asked a question. And we just had it was like talking to, I would say, a friendly professor, literally like a human being. It was as if I was having a conversation, a typed conversation with a professor. It was extraordinary, terrifying. And yeah, James, I think maybe we are the last generation of free human beings before AI takes over.
Absolutely. And I mean, I play with AI all the time. I love it. I think it's a great tool. It's not a replacement by any stretch at this point, but it is a great tool to really bring into your toolbox for different uses. And, but it's fun. I mean, what can I say? I use it to create, graphics or, images and, change images that I've got and just to play with it. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And I encourage our viewers, if you haven't played with it, get in there and just try it, whether it's the Meta AI or Gemini by Google or the Meta AI. There's just so many different ones to play with that I really have fun with it.
Indeed. So fascinating stuff. So we'll just hope it stays subservient to the human race a little while longer. But talking of the Sikh religion and India's fear of the Sikh community, Jaggi, of course, one figure who has figured large, certainly on our channel on a regular basis, but figures large in the Sikh community as somebody who has been arbitrarily detained for now over 7 years, essentially because of the threat, even just as an individual, practicing his Sikh religion and practicing his principles as a Sikh, standing up to injustice wherever it stands. He was responsible for highlighting India's past appalling track record on human rights and the genocides it perpetrated against the community in the 80s and 90s. Well, as a result of his actions, when he flew back to India to get married, flew back to the Punjab to get married, he was bundled into the back of a van. When he popped out to buy some cigarettes or something, or popped round to the local shop, he was bundled into the back of the van and never been seen since, leaving his poor wife, his new wife, wondering what had happened to him. It turned out he'd been arbitrarily detained by the Indian authorities. He was tortured. Yes, he was actually tortured. He was subjected to electro-torture. He was actually apparently covered in petrol and threatened to be set alight. These are pretty awful events that occurred to him by the Indian state. This is by the Indian police, don't forget, a so-called democracy. And he remains in arbitrary detention now for 2,677 days. Again, it's an absolute outrage. It is a legal outrage. It's a democratic outrage. And we will continue to highlight his case until hopefully one day he comes home. The British government, as I often say, have been appalling in their actions on this. They've done absolutely nothing. Certainly, there have been zero results in terms of firstly highlighting his case. A few MPs do try on a regular basis to highlight his case in Parliament, but the government, whether it was the Conservative government of the last 10 plus years, 14 years actually, or the current Starmer government, nothing has been done. He still remains in arbitrary detention. So I just wanted to give a quick update of what's been happening over the last week or so. It does appear there's been a little progress. I don't know what that means, if it's positive or not, but I'll just give you a quick flick through what's happened. On the 15th of February, so going back a couple of weeks, he did appear for his 148th hearing by video, and him and his co-accused had statements received from the jail finally presented to court, and his defence arguments were also finally made. It was then that case was adjourned to the 24th of February. One of his other cases on the 20th of February, this was the 33rd hearing of one of his other cases. So he's got 9 cases in total. I mean, it is just an absolute quagmire. It is a legal quagmire that he is stuck in, that he's trying to fight his way through. His 33rd trial hearing at Patiala for one of the NIA cases saw the prosecution failed to produce witnesses, again, leading to the hearing being immediately adjourned. And then the following day, the 21st, the 34th trial hearing again at Patiala saw the prosecution fail to produce witnesses as listed again. So the following day, the 22nd, after that adjournment, they appeared again. So the 35th trial hearing at Patiala saw the prosecution again for the 3rd day in a row failed to produce witnesses as listed, leading to the hearing being immediately adjourned and deferred until April, late April. Can you imagine, James, this happening in Canada or the UK? If the prosecution failed to produce witnesses, the judge would have done them for contempt of court. This is just unbelievable. Yet somehow they can get away with it in India. And then on the 24th of February, now a week ago, his 149th trial hearing, his defence team were allowed finally to provide their arguments for the Scot and his co-accused. The defence managed to do this in just 5 hearings. The prosecution needed over 140 hearings to do the same. And that was only after the presiding judge forced the conclusion. So again, contrast what's going on here. The defence managed to get their case across in 5 days, which actually is pretty normal for any democratic law court for it to happen. But prosecution took 140, and that was even under pressure from the judge. And what does that imply? Well, we all know what that implies. This isn't a process under the normal rule of law. This is a process deliberately being bogged down into that quagmire, as I described it, by the Indian government to send a statement. It's an absolute outrage. And then on the 28th of February, yes, it reached a milestone, 150 trial hearings on this one case. So he reached his 150th trial hearing. That was at Baga Purana. The hearing was then adjourned until tomorrow, the 4th of March. So again, James, it's just a catalogue of absolute democratic legal outrage. And just as an addendum to this, here in the UK, of course, his case remains very, very public. People, the community are out there on a regular basis. For example, here I'm showing the Severdars in Wolverhampton continuing to advocate for him, continuing to raise his profile. They're handing out leaflets. Delighted to see in Scotland, on BBC Scotland, one of the regular reporters who's been following his case since he was his first arbitrarily detained, Katie Hunter, produced a podcast in conjunction with another BBC journalist, Callum Mackay. They produced a podcast. Again, it remains mainstream. This is on the BBC Scotland website and was broadcast on the BBC Sounds, I think they call it. Again, highlighting they did a complete review of the case, why he's been arbitrarily detained, what's going on, etc., etc. So, James, this case remains very high profile. We certainly will not forget it, as the community has not done. We will continue to pressure from our small voice, but all these small voices combine into a much louder clamour. We all must combine and continue to help Gurpreet, his brother, and his family fight this case to raise the awareness of what's going on to Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, and we must get the British government to act. As I say, the results so far have been appalling from the British government. It's about time they got off their proverbial backsides and brought him home, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, you brought up one very important question. That is, why is the court system allowing these continued delays? And the only answer, as you nailed it right on the head there, Angus, is that if the prosecutor has no case, they'll just lose the individual in the system, in the bureaucracy, keep them detained and locked up so that they can at least inconvenience them, keep them quiet, and quell that voice. We know that for when people fail to speak up, they're robbing themselves of their voice. But when politicians and governments refuse to listen, that robs everybody of democracy and justice and accountability. So again, make your voices heard. Go online, find the petition for Jaggy and sign it. And again, it is just a horrible mess. We wouldn't see that in Canada. We wouldn't see that in the US. You wouldn't see that in the UK, where there are certain time limits. There are rights of the inmates or the accused. And this has been dragging on for way too long. It is just disgusting that there hasn't been more international pressure, even outside of the UK, to say, hey, what are you doing? You've got to do something here because this is just not right. And we'll be following it closely as it continues, Angus.
And I'm trying to think of an equivalent here in the West, and it's the only thing I can think of is something like Tommy Robinson. And James, I don't know if you're aware of him. He's a right-wing campaigner, activist. He's a thorn in the British government's side. He's very loud. He's a very political activist, but he's also been a huge target of the British government, and he has been arrested several times. Very questionable why he's been arrested, because essentially he is a real danger to the British deep state, let's call it. But at least when he is brought to trial, and he is brought to trial on a regular basis, but that process is very quick. He's always allowed a very powerful legal team. He fights his corner, but the legal process is quick. It's effective. He's done his time. I think he's in prison at the moment on something, but at least he is treated as a citizen through the normal through the normal legal process. Rightly or wrongly, but at least he has the opportunity to defend himself. He is convicted, or he is otherwise not convicted and freed, etc. But that's the only equivalent. But at least here in the UK, and no doubt the same in North America, whether a political protester, however irritating and annoying he might be to the state, these people at least receive fair hearings and the process is quick. In India, it's just an absolute disgrace what's going on. He has been deliberately kept in prison by the Indian government as a message to anybody who dares stand up to the Indian state. It's an absolute outrage, James.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you can look at the January 6th protesters or rioters or whatever you want to call them. But at the end of the day, regardless as to what side of that argument you're on, nobody can say that they were not treated fairly through the judicial system, right from bail hearings through to trials, through to plea deals and everything else. So, I mean, at least in the Western world, we have a somewhat reliable justice system, and it's far from perfect. Angus, we know that there are ways that our justice systems need to be improved, but at the end of the day, they work.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. You described it perfectly. They're not perfect. They do have the flaws. And for example, Tommy Robinson is clearly politically targeted by the state and the legal system. But at least he does have his fair due process through the legal process. He is given the opportunity to defend himself and to free himself, or his legal team, to prove his innocence, where the case may be, etc. So again, not perfect, but at least it works, as opposed to India. Right, James. Under pressure of time, let's move on to my second story, and this is again I picked this story because it's a classic example of propaganda and how propaganda can be so dangerous, and when it's called out, and how effective the anti-propaganda movement can be. And this is a case of, in the United States, the Harvard University is one of these one of these Ivy League universities. It's been around a very long time, I think a couple of hundred years or so. And it's highly respected, and whenever its in-house newspapers and its in-house publications are produced, they are highly respected. They are widely read by the academic world, by let's call it the academic elite world, and what is printed there is usually peer-reviewed, and it carries a lot of weight. Now, the Harvard International Review is actually one of these quarterly magazines that they produce, and it offers an insight into international affairs, and it's from the perspectives, as I say, from the academic elite. These are scholars, leaders, and the policymakers. Now, the International Review produced an article recently. It was written by a lady. Actually, I'll come on to her name in a moment. And it talked about the Khalistan movement. Now, it was a typical piece of propaganda, whether deliberate or not, but it was certainly written with a complete and utter bias against the Khalistan movement. And it basically parroted India's attitude towards the Khalistan movement. It regurgitated a load of old, tired tropes that we often highlight, that the Khalistan movement are terrorists, etc. And as a result, this article, which was published, was rescinded, it was redacted, or it was removed because complaints, unsurprisingly, came from the community saying, hang on, this is not true. So I'm just going to highlight, I'm just going to quickly flick through. This is another publication produced by the university, the Harvard Crimson, as it's called. And the Harvard Crimson is, they actually wrote an article about the Harvard International Review, talking about the removal of this article. What they said was the Harvard International Review removed an article criticising the Sikh separatist Khalistan movement after the piece drew a wave of backlash from Sikh readers, including a complaint from the Harvard's own Sikh chaplain. Now, the article, which was published in a couple of weeks ago, it was titled "A Thorn in the Maple: How the Khalistan Question is Reshaping India-Canada Relations." And it argued that the Khalistan movement lacked widespread support. Yeah, we've heard that before, which is untrue. And echoed allegations from the Indian government that key leaders were terrorists. Oh yes, here we go again. So when the complaints began to pour in, unsurprisingly, the HIR, that's the Harvard International Review, the editors-in-chief asked the article's author, Zaina Dillon, to make changes. She refused, writing in an email that the article already reflected the balance that she wished to achieve. Well, I mean, again, I'm chuckling because there's not much balance when you start making those accusations. They wrote that the article did not meet their standards for neutrality, describing Dillon's article as an opinionated style of journalism rather than the analytical reporting HIR has published for nearly 50 years. Dillon's article argued that the strength of Sikh nationalism in Canada has inflamed tensions between Canada and India, which outlaws the Khalistan movement. Now, I don't disagree with that particular case. But then it turns out that the article focused on violence in the Khalistani movement without contextualizing the movement's suppression. And what had actually happened here, when she wrote the article, she'd actually, and again, it's a classic piece of partisan propaganda, where she did talk about the violence of the Sikh community in the 1980s and 1990s. What she didn't say was put it in context. Why was the community supposedly violent? It was, of course, violent because it was trying to defend, it was trying to literally fight for its life, as in the Indian state was perpetrating a genocide against a whole young generation of Sikhs. Who dared stand up for their own human rights. They were fighting literally not just for their human rights, but their very survival. We were talking about extrajudicial killings. We're talking about young Sikh men who were taken out into the countryside by the police and shot, and their bodies buried or disappeared or cremated, never to be seen again. And all these false encounters, etc. So it's unsurprising that Sikhs then took up arms to try and literally defend their lives. So what she had done in this article, she removed that whole context of the extrajudicial killings and instead saying, oh, look, they all rose up, they took arms against the Indian state. It was basically a bunch of Sikhs who were picking up arms and attacking the Sikh state. That was the complete false premise that she put in the article. So she was written to and notified that the article had been removed by HIR in response to a 4-page complaint from Harpreet Singh. He was the Harvard's Sikh chaplain. Singh denounced Dillon's argument as a dangerous equivalency that conflated all Khalistan activism with terrorism. So basically she'd said that anybody who's a Khalistani is therefore by definition a terrorist. He accused Dillon of presenting uncorroborated data from the Indian government and downplaying global and Punjabi support for Khalistan. Dillon, who herself is from the Punjab, said she thought the HIR's proposed modifications arose because its editors were perhaps not intimately familiar with the context of the Khalistan movement. So she's trying to claim that HIR doesn't know the context of the Khalistan movement when she herself has just displayed the fact that she clearly has either deliberately or otherwise had no idea why the Sikh community were taking up arms back in the 80s and 90s. They seem to think that me presenting the Khalistan movement in a certain way is a matter of my opinion rather than what is like the actual situation on the ground. Well, I'm sorry, Ms. Dillon, but clearly you really don't know what's going on the ground, because as we regularly say, okay, if the Khalistan movement is a bunch or is a collective of terrorists, show me the evidence. I see no evidence. All I see is that these guys who represent the Khalistan movement on the ground in the Punjab are finding themselves in jail but not convicted. Show me any convictions. Show me the charges. Are there any charges of terrorism? I don't see any charges of terrorism. I see people locked up under this spurious NIA, the NIA, the UAPA, all these really dangerous pieces of legislation that fly in the face of democracy, that have such a low threshold that you could basically lock up any political enemy for any reason on your whim. I don't see any terrorism. So again, Ms. Dillon, show us the evidence. All you've done is just parroted Indian propaganda. So it is not surprising that in a democratic nation like the United States, in a respected in a respected publication coming from Harvard University, where evidence has to be presented and peer-reviewed and approved, you failed that test because you're parroting Indian propaganda, which on any platform, any democratic platform, under any microscope, any test or investigation, is proved to be false, is proved to be just sheer, utter propaganda created by a state that is unaccountable and running out of control, and certainly is far from any democratic norm that we recognise, James.
Absolutely, Angus. And I mean, let's face it, the Harvard Crimson's been around since 1873, about there, one of the oldest continuously running newspapers in the United States. And they have a duty of care. They have ethical responsibility, and they take that seriously, unlike some other journalistic sources these days. They take that seriously and want to make sure that if there is something wrong, that they correct it. And that is why I give them props for this, because they took a step to correct the misinformation or the inconclusive and inaccurate and incomplete information in all of those areas. And we talk about a lot of the different issues that were going on that faced the Sikhs throughout the generations. And this is a very one-sided, very unfair and inaccurate portrayal of the truth. Again, if there were terroristic activities going on, I know I wouldn't be sitting here, and neither would you, I don't think, Angus. We know that that is not the truth. We know that the any label of terrorism comes from the India government, and it's under the NIA and other politically motivated acts that have been passed through Parliament in order to protect and quell dissent and any opposition. So again, it's very important to keep that in mind. When you look at it as an overall judgment, I hope that most of the people that read the original article find the truth in this correction or amendment. And when she says that it gives her balance of the both sides, well, you know what? Hitler thought that he was balancing what he thought his message should be as well. Didn't make it right, didn't make it accurate. So again, it's all about the ethics in journalism, and it's good to see that there are still some people following those ethical standards these days, Angus. And even if it is over at Harvard, because my alma mater was Cornell, so you know.
Right. So, but what it certainly does highlight, James, and you're absolutely right, is that whenever this propaganda raises its ugly head in whatever publication here in the West, is the community must stand up and watch very closely for things like this appearing and stamp down on it very, very quickly, because these things do get legs. People read these things, so it's important that the truth is trumping this propaganda. So. Right, James, let's move on to loads of comments to get through today. So I'm going to whip through these today as we've got a lot to get through. TC starts us off. This is after my podcast last week where I talked with Dr. Sandy. Dr. Singh Sandhu. We talked about a few topics, but one of the main topics was Narendra Modi's visit to the United States. And, excuse me, TC says, does Narendra Modi want the Punjab for his rich associates? Well, this is a big question, James. We've talked often about how the Punjab is being slowly eroded and dissolved in terms of its commercial capabilities, its law and orders breaking down. Is this a deliberate policy by the Narendra Modi government? We argue it is, and many people, certainly many of my podcast guests, argue that the Punjab is deliberately being destroyed from within and undermined on every level. And the argument here, as TC says, is it because Modi wants Punjab for himself? It's not impossible. He's trying to drive out the Sikh community. Maybe he wants he wants full control of the land, maybe for his rich associates, as we often talk about, his billionaire mates.
Certainly, and we've brought this up in the past about, the impact of the drug problem and the substance abuse issues in Punjab, with the criminals being returned to India and they're landing in Amritsar. We brought this up in how that could be working in part for Modi to try to destroy what's there and to distract the people of Punjab from actually, the real issues and trying to move forward to make it a better place. And again, that we say could be a tactic by Modi, the BJP and others to really take over and just rob it of its cultural and its natural heritage.
Indeed, and as TC says, everyone is answerable to God. Yes, even Donald Trump. Right, let's move on. Mr. Mann. India tried to make deportations as an anti-Khalistan show. This is absolutely right. Basically, even Narendra Modi is managing to make turn the deportations against the Sikh community. Landing in Amritsar airport, he's making a big show. He's using every possible advantage of the story. He's leveraging it, even using the deportations to smear the Khalistan movement. And as John Kalo points out, Punjab is fighting a war on two fronts. One, of course, is domestically, as we reported last week, about the ongoing battle for the Sikh voice, the democratic voice in the Punjab, whether it's the SGPC, the Akali Dal, and of course the RSS, who've managed to take control of all those, the Shiromani Akali Dal, they've managed to take control of those organisations as one front for the Sikh community. But as you rightly say, in the whole Punjab politics, as one side, the second is the BJP class Hindu agenda. So yes, so that they're fighting their own supposed voice, democratic voices in the form of the Shiromani Akali Dal, SGPC, but they're also fighting the RSS and the BJP. In other words, they're being attacked from all sides, James.
Absolutely. And it just doesn't end. It's coming from all different sources. But again, the Sikh people and the people of Punjab are going to stand their ground, and they have historically, and they will well into the future, Angus. Indeed.
Now, we received an interesting email from one of our regular watchers, one of our correspondents who's going to remain anonymous. Dear Angus and James, some interesting points. Now, this was going back to when you and I, James, we were called Goras, and I did say, I think I quickly Googled it, and it meant whiteys, I think is what it translates as. Now, this our correspondent has very kindly given quite an extensive explanation of a lot of this, and he said the word Gora means fair one. Sikh parents often name their kids Gora, Angraj English, and they name their kids Kala black. Often songs are sung as duets where the girl is the fair one, the boy is the black one. As protagonists, they challenge each other. Girl is the fair one or the princess. The boy will be challenged as black from working in fields under the hot sun, meaning as a labourer. And again, it does actually, it reflects, there's a sort of, we don't really have time to go into this in much detail, but basically it's the black and white argument. Is it good or evil, or it's just simple contrast? And this is where I think the movement, certainly here in the West, the woke movement, let's call it, has abducted this whole basic premise of black and white as a simple contrast into this huge political movement, and they're saying you can't even call a blackboard, as that we all used to chalk on as children. You can't call it a blackboard anymore because black is seen as racist. But unfortunately, the whole thing was never about racism. It was all about simple contrast, black and white. And Gora, for example, I don't get offended being called a whitey or a Gora. But unfortunately, this movement is if you call anybody black or use the word black in any context, suddenly that's a racist trope, etc., etc. And again, I don't want to get down that argument too far. It's too long and complicated. But thank you for clearing that one up. And you do talk about how different cultures treat this. And you say Sikh kids in early years get called by their mum, you black puppy, meaning mischievous pup. That's fine, that's harmless, it's innocent. But the woke movement saying, oh no, that's racist, that's bad, you must not do this. It's almost a form of fascism, etc. And again, I don't want to get in that too far. And again, loads of points brought up in your email. Thank you for this email. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go into too much detail. What you do say is that the Hindus are using language and as a weapon to hit the Sikh community, as you say in the movie that one of the Hindu movie makers made. Sikh characters are referred to as Paji, meaning fake, even in a story where 21 Sikhs fought against 10,000 Afghan tribesmen, so heroic stories, but the Sikh characters are still referred to with a pejorative term. As you say, we are under attack from every possible direction, etc. And then he chuckled over James that you don't speak French, James, as you were addressed in the beginning.
Bonjour, comment ça va? Je m'appelle James Cousineau.
Absolutely.
Most people took French in school. I took an extra long lunch.
Yeah, don't blame you. It's not one of the easiest languages to learn, I have to say. But thank you for your email. Unfortunately, so we don't have time to get into too many comments on that. Maybe we'll come back to that one. Pritam Kurman says, this is about the land being owned by the tax, the five seats of power of Sikhi power in the Punjab and in fact in India. The tax belonged to the gurus. The tax in Maharashtra belonged to Guru Gobind Singh Ji. The land on which the tax is and the surrounding land is still registered in the name of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. I didn't know this. So apparently the land is still registered in the original Guru's title. He or his family, I guess his descendants, maybe presumably still own that land. The railway station, the airport is under Guru Gobind Singh Ji. The Maharashtra government has their people in that Gurdwara. Yeah, I guess they've taken control of it. The other tax is in Uttar Pradesh. The RSS has destroyed some historic Sikh Gurdwaras, etc., etc. Even the land on the eastern part of the boundary of China and India belongs to the Sikhs. The Chinese president, this is interesting, has been saying for years that land is being held for the Khalsa Raj. It's not for India. So what you're saying is even China recognises it. It should belong to the Khalsa Raj, the sovereign state of Khalistan. Right. There's another piece of land around Bhutan, I think, where there's a sign left by Guru Nanak that the Buddhists visit. Interesting. So, so according to this comment, James, is that the gurus, the ancient gurus, or in fact their descendants, still technically own a lot of this land across north and northwestern India.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I love these comments when people actually bring a lot of the fact and history. And I learned something from it and I find it very interesting to read through. So thank you very much for sharing that comment. And by all means, we love reading it. So don't be shy to make your comments long. We love them.
Yep, thanks for letting us know. That was a fascinating comment, that one. Right, Happy, this is an interesting one. Ahatbeed commented, "Hi guys, Ajit Doval was handed a summons on the 12th of February from the USA court when he went to USA with Modi." And I did mention this in the podcast. For those who may not be aware, Ajit Doval visited the US last week or the week before with Narendra Modi. Gurpatwan Singh Punnin's legal team managed to serve him officially his notice, his summons, or whatever they call it in the States, his indictment. They have to be officially served. And of course, Ajit Doval took every effort not to be served, unsurprisingly. But they were very clever. When he actually landed in the US and he was wandering around, whatever, his legal team managed to officially serve his papers. So yes, this relates to the court case back in September last year. Gurpatwan Singh Punnin is now taking Ajit Doval to court in the US, not that Ajit Doval will have the courage to appear and respect his summons, but Gurpatan Singh Pannu is taking legal action against Ajit Doval, the National Security Advisor to Narendra Modi, over the assassination plot. So those papers were served. So well done to Gurpatan Singh Pannu's legal team. Now, Danny, one of our regular our regular commenters, says, well, what's that going to do? In other words, what good was that? But Tirath Singh says, I don't think this channel's for you, Danny. And Danny responds, this just made me laugh. I'm just bored. So in other words, Danny's just so bored, he's passing his time. And Danny's written loads and loads of fairly extensive, and I have to say, really good comments. I enjoy reading Danny's comments. Very informed, very, very interesting comments. But Danny, I think you said you were a Hindu. So Danny often sits on the other side of the narrative, which is always fascinating to see. So despite the fact that you're bored, Danny, thank you for your comments. I think they're really clearly you're not just bored, you're fascinatingly bored. And Tirath Singh then says, look, my reply is deleted by channel, and Danny says the same, that some of his comments. Now, I did actually make a comment myself after this saying, no, and I brought this up deliberately because once again, we have to highlight to all our commenters and all our audience, we do not delete comments. Let me repeat that. We never delete comments. We are up for freedom of speech. If we get comments that are critical, that are rude even to some extent, the only comments I will delete are those that are literally just profanities that make no point. Even if they contain profanities and make a point, I will still allow them. They'll still be printed. But if they're just a simple profanity, which one or two, very few are, but one or two do get through, yes, they're the only ones we delete. We never, ever, ever, ever delete comments. I checked with the team, the whole Satluj team, asked them, does anybody ever delete comments? No, we do not delete comments. So let me make that very clear, as I always do, James. We never delete comments. YouTube often filters them out under its algorithm, under its automatic filter system. I always, sometimes I forget, or I'm a bit late. Apologies if I do, but I always do go through the filtered comments, and I go approve. They're always approved. So if your comment doesn't appear immediately, do wait, refresh or whatever, because sometimes it will reappear. It just means that it's YouTube itself has filtered it out. But apparently comments do disappear. I've Googled this. It's not unusual. Apparently YouTube does sometimes lose comments, whether that's deliberate or not, I don't know. We don't delete them. There is a question, maybe YouTube deletes them for some reason, James.
Yeah, and again, it's all up to the algorithms and the system. It is technology. It's far from perfect. I do love at the bottom in that last part about don't worry, he refers to him as bro. So there's still a level of respect going on in that conversation, which I really like.
Absolutely.
So yeah, kudos, guys. That was great. I love the respect there. Even though you may disagree on things, it's always good to hold a level of respect. But hey, remember, even if you got negative things to say to us, by all means, that's what makes up our favorite. Yeah, Critics Corner. So
absolutely.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, and Critics Corner has been very, very quiet of late. So where are our critics? Come on, guys, let's get criticising. We do enjoy our Critics Corner. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, I have to say thank you.
Doing something right, I guess.
Well, exactly, right or wrong, depending on your point of view. But I have to say, it's nice seeing a lot of these threads, because even though there are lots of arguments raging, they're always very polite, very respectful. So thank you to all our commenters for keeping it polite, respectful, and intelligent in most cases. And final set, Preetam Korman makes a return as well in comments saying, I know that Guru Nanak travelled the world, and this is documented. This is, of course, is the first guru back in the 17th century. I didn't know this. Apparently, Guru Nanak Dev Ji travelled the world, and this is documented in books located in world libraries. But what you're saying, it's not for public access, only in the reserve section. Stay tuned. That sounds intriguing, James.
Just to keep us ready for more. On the edge of our seats.
So we are staying tuned. Preetam Korman, let us know what you find. Fascinating stuff. Kamal Jitrai says, hi James and Angus. I understand a little better about the Khalistan movement by watching your show. I'm from Canada, Surrey, one of your locals, James. But what the comment here is nice is that you are learning more about the Khalistan movement. And that's just reminded me, I didn't find that comment. I meant to put this comment up. One of our commenters did say it's not Khalistan, it's Khalistan. So whether it's Punjab or Panjab, whether it's Sikh or Sikh, it's now Khalistan, according to one of our commenters. Sorry to hijack your comment, Kamal Jitrai, but thank you for that. James, we'll never get it right, will we?
No, absolutely not. And just before we go on to the next comment, Angus, I just wanted to point out for some of the viewers, I was talking about the Honchilar massacre last week. We'll be doing that tomorrow night. So if anybody tuned in expecting it tonight or today, then we'll have that on tomorrow, though. It's just a bit longer of a story for tonight's timeline.
Indeed. And Free Spirit says, from the good old US of A, welcome to you, Free Spirit. Love you guys. Well, we love you guys commenting. Thank you for your comments. Keep dropping your £2,000 truth bombs. Well, we do love doing that. Bombs away, James, eh?
Exactly.
And could you also announce the time of your live broadcast? Well, we don't actually yet broadcast live. It is not impossible that we will broadcast live in the foreseeable future. We're building, certainly here I'm building a new set, which is nearly ready. We're getting there. It's taken a long time, but it's not impossible. The goal is that we will get to a stage where we can start broadcasting live. It's likely to be, off the top of my head, we don't know, but it probably will be the time we're actually recording this now, which is we start around about 6:30 a.m. UK time, GMT, which is James, Canada's time, 8 hours behind, 10:30 p.m.
10:30 p.m.
So that'll be about 5 hours Eastern Standard Time behind. So about 1:30 a.m. So probably not very comfortable for you, Free Spirit. Excuse me, unless of course you work the night shift. So apologies for that. It's very difficult to get it right, to get a time that works for everybody, James, isn't it?
Yeah, and even when we do go live, don't worry, folks, it will still be available online as well. So it's not as though we're going to do live and just disappear. You'll still be able to watch the repeat of the show online. So indeed,
we still will. All the shows will always be up on YouTube and of course across our network TV channels and the IPTV channels.
That's right.
You'll always be able to catch us, just not necessarily live. So, but thank you anyway for the question. And to sign off for the day, Suff2 Muffins says, we should do more comments. Please do more and share more the voice of justice. Now, I don't know whether that's you saying we should do more comments on the show or that people should comment more. Well, what I would say is certainly if you comment more, we probably end up doing more comments on the show itself. And we do enjoy the comment section. I have to say it's my favourite part of the show. I do love going through the comments. It's always great to have a bit of banter and picking up some of the most fascinating pieces of information, James.
Absolutely. As I always say, we love to see the comments, we love to learn from them, and we love to feel that you are a part of the show along with us. So it's a journey for all of us together.
Exactly, that is exactly what it is, James. It is bringing our audience into the show, which does make the show so much more fun and so much more enjoyable to do. It's that interaction between ourselves and you, our wonderful audience, each and every one of you, particularly our regulars. Thank you for coming back and watching us, but also welcome to those who are new to the channel. I hope you stay with us. We do enjoy having you with us and having you on the channel, and certainly the comments that you raise. We always do enjoy not just reading them, but of course reacting to them and responding and having that sort of virtual conversation with each of you in the audience. But anyway, unfortunately, we must bring the show to a close for another day. You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. Please don't forget to keep those comments coming in. Thank you for those comments that have come in. And don't forget, you can message us directly at message@satellitetv.com on anything you'd like to bring to our attention that you don't want to put in the public domain. Please do keep those emails coming in. But in the meantime, thank you so much once again for watching Perspectives. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.